Hi, and welcome to the show.
Hello, and welcome to Cup of Joe and a Show, Episode 9. Today we are talking about Psycho, the Alfred Hitchcock film from 1960.
Mm-hmm.
And with me today I have Kenny Kramer, who had never heard a fly.
Oh, I would.
Nicholas Sherk, who goes a little mad sometimes.
Just sometimes. Just a twitch. Not a big deal.
Don't do it, Nick!
And me, Jared Walker, who actually has nothing to say.
Suspicious.
Because I've been dead for 10 years.
Spoilers in the intro?
Nick,
Wow.
you ruined the movie
I'm
for me.
sorry. I just had to.
If you haven't seen this movie until today, you're probably Kenny.
Wait, didn't you not see it until today either?
Yes, but I also knew the plot, and Kenny did
So
not.
why did you just call me out on it?
Interesting.
Anyway.
Nick, you better just start before something happens.
Anyway, before I lose all of my credibility to this podcast.
Yeah.
By the way, I wish we had video because Nick almost did a spit take all over his laptop.
I did. It would have been bad. It would have been real bad.
Well,
Anyways.
to start this episode, we're going to find out what Kenny's background with this movie is.
Kenny, did you know anything about it? Have you ever heard of it? Did you know of Alfred Hitchcock? Did you know...
Oh, so I could have slipped under a rock? Yes, I've heard of Albert Hitchcock.
I'm so glad I was this close to taking a drink. Was that on purpose? Or did you...
Oh, man.
Okay, so
we're going off the rails really fast on this episode.
You've heard of Alfred Hitchcock, though.
Not Albert.
There may be an Albert Hitchcock. I don't know. I didn't follow his family tree
I
from my...
wanted to say Alfred, but it just came out as Albert.
But you were so sure. You were like...
You really were. You were like so confident. You're like
yes.
Because I was going to say Albert. And then the name Albert came in my head, and I was like, dang, bro.
Okay.
Anyway,
so you know.
So Kenny's never even heard of this movie before.
But you've heard of Alfred
I've
Hitchcock.
I've heard of Alfred Hitchcock. I said it right.
Alfred Hitchcock.
You said Al Ford.
Are you doing it on purpose or not? I'm so confused.
Are we sure he even watched the movie
I
with
don't know.
us?
Did you fall asleep, Kenny?
No.
So what's the director's name?
Your face.
I believe in you. You're gonna get this. I know you will.
All right. What's the director's name?
Alfred.
Last name?
High fives all around. Good job, everyone.
What's his last name?
You tell me.
This is your error.
This is a Mexican standoff right now.
It's a real Mexican standoff, boys.
Not really.
Anyways, so you had heard of it.
I've heard of it.
You've heard of the name more than
Heard of the
anything.
name, and I've heard of the director.
Mm-hmm. We've got to move forward.
4 minutes in, and we haven't even gotten past
Start
it.
over. No.
This intro is too great to keep.
is fabulous. Anyways, so you heard a little bit about him, not much, but you never seen the film for sure.
Never saw it.
Okay. Have you seen any other of his, like ever?
Rear Window or...
Dial M for Murder, Vertigo, anything like that?
No.
No. Okay. All right. Jared, your background with the film? Had you ever seen it before?
I have never seen this film before, but I have seen so much. It's so much in pop culture that you kind of unless you're living under a rock, you could never hear about this movie. Like, the twist is almost it's like Star Wars. It's so hard not to know what it's about.
Yeah, that's true.
And the shower scene, you just say the shower scene, everybody knows what you're talking about.
Yeah, that's true.
They can picture it. They can picture the music. They can picture just every visual about it. And after that is where people don't actually know much about it otherwise.
Yeah, it does it's very well known for those two things, and then after that, it's basically just a movie. Mm-hmm. And I mean, that's fine. Like, it's a fabulous movie in my opinion, but
yeah.
We'll get to
but
that
I
later.
also I kind of like bring that idea to the fact that people don't want to watch a black and white movie from 1960.
I don't know.
With actors who they don't know who they are.
I think if you colorize it, it wouldn't have the same effect. Like, it just wouldn't. It
probably wouldn't, but more people would ingest it.
Yeah, but that's because they ingest it doesn't make it good. Like,
it's
the thing is, it's already cemented itself as a like
one of the best movies of all time.
Yeah, like it makes everyone's top 100 list every year. Even as time goes on, it makes a lot of people's top 10s, and like it's just like you don't have to. I don't know. It's one of those things where it's like it's not broke, don't fix it, right?
Yeah.
And there are scenes that people have colorized, but anyways, we're getting off topic. So Nick, I don't know why I said that, but I have seen this film. I actually watched it for a film literature class I took in high school, and I loved the movie then, and it's easily one of my top 5 movies of all time. And there's just so much that I love about it. There's so much that I just enjoy. I'm so ready for this episode. This is like one of my crowning, I think, achievement episodes that I think it'll be the best one, I think, from me at least. But,
personally.
Yeah, exactly. So anyways, as Jared mentioned earlier, it's a 1960 film. I took them a long time to make this film because no one wanted to pick it up. It's an Alfred Hitchcock film, as I said before. I think we all mentioned movies: Rear Window, Dial M for Murder, Vertigo. He did a whole TV series called Alfred Hitchcock Presents back in the 60s and I think maybe 50s. And he's a very well-known horror slasher thriller movie more than anything. And this actually is one of the earliest occurrences of a slasher film, and many believe that it's actually the first slasher film, or if it's not, then it definitely set the tone for the genre moving forward. And it actually, to be quite honest, set the tone for American filmmaking overall in terms of violence and especially sexuality, because this film breaks a lot of the barriers that Hollywood,
of rules
that
you can't do. That's why it took so long to get picked up.
Okay with this movie at all, but stars many famous actors for the time. Looking back on it, I've never seen any of the movies that these people have been in. But obviously the main character, Norman Bates, is Anthony Perkins. He's actually only really known for Psycho and Green Willow, which I've never seen, but he did a lot of European films after this movie.
And also in 26 years later, he did Psycho 2, 3, and 4.
Yes, it is true that he did star in the sequels. But Vera Williams, who plays Marion Crane's sister, Lila, she plays in Tarzan's Hidden Jungle, which didn't know that was a movie, and also The Wrong Man. John Gavin, who plays Sam, the boyfriend throughout the movie, is he plays in a movie called Imitation and Spartacus. There were a lot others, but those two sounded really cool to me, so that's why I chose those.
This character's name, I will give it later in the tidbits section. His name and the main character, the actress of the main character, those two names and the actors spawned every trope, every slasher movie you can think of, to Michael Myers and Scream. It's just, they're intertwined in this in such a way that almost every horror movie after this is in the same
defined a genre.
Yeah, everybody takes from this, even if you don't think you are, because everyone before you, if you've taken from somebody else, they've taken from this.
Okay. Yeah, I can see that. Like I said, it's a very influential film. So, back to the characters, just the main ones. I'm just giving you guys kind of a rundown. Martin Balsam, he plays the PI in the film. His name's Milton Abergast or something. Yeah, something. I can't remember his last name. I just wrote Milton. I don't know why I didn't write his last name. Stars in 12 Angry Men, which I have heard of that film.
It is
at least.
fantastic. It is probably in my top 5 movies of all time. Okay. It is that good.
And he also stars in Breakfast at Tiffany's, which I have heard of that movie.
Yes, I've heard that
So-
it's kind of overrated, but I have not seen it, so I don't have an opinion.
Fair enough. John McIntyre plays the sheriff towards the end of the film, kind of like the second, third act, I guess. Also stars in Far Country and Asphalt Jungle, which those two I've never heard of. I would watch Asphalt Jungle though; sounds interesting. And then Janet Leigh, who obviously is Marion. She's technically the main character in the film, although that's very much up for grabs. And she plays in Touch of Evil and The Vikings, which never seen either of those, but I would watch The Vikings.
Mm-hmm.
That sounds interesting.
She also has a cameo in one of the movies I'll talk about in the tidbit section.
Oh, there you go. So, just going to give you guys a quick plot overview, and then we're going to do some deep dive here. So, it starts off, obviously, if you've never seen the film, Phoenix, Arizona is where the main setting takes place right off the bat. 2:43 p.m. It's very specifically defined in the title credits, so I thought I would include it just because Hitchcock is very intentional with what he puts on screen. So, starts off with Marion and Sam in the hotel. They've clearly gone through some sort of affair that they're having. I don't even know if it's an affair. I do think Sam is married in the movie, but I can't technically remember.
I believe he's going through a divorce and paying alimony until the girl finds a new husband.
Right. Okay. Yeah, you're right. So you get this whole madly in love but torn apart. They're like 100% cheating. Like there's no way around it. Like something is going on. They're having to hide what they're doing. So she goes back to work. This is I don't even know. It looks like a real estate business, honestly, from what I gathered. Anyway, there's a large amount of money that comes into the business's possession, and there's a lot of talk of money buying off unhappiness, and this really speaks to Marion's situation, just because she is very much unhappy with where she's at, or at least she feels that way in the moment. So, of course, Marion steals the money. She drives off to see Sam, and she actually lies to her boss and states that she's going home because she has a headache. She takes the money home, supposed to deposit it. The classic crosswalk scene of her in the car with her boss walking by, and he kind of turns and just looks, then looks back and walks on. And it's just like this terror in her eyes, but classic scene. So then she's driving, sleeps on the side of the road for the night. And this is where you get the very suspicious cop, which is it's an interesting scene, but it's very, if you look back on it, it's kind of creepy how much he follows her. Mm-hmm. But I get he's suspicious, but you're kind of like, like at some point let a person do their own thing. But
you also might be seeing from her perspective, he might not actually be paying that much attention, but she's so
like in her mind about what she's done.
She's so paranoid
right.
that she thinks that he's always there.
Mm-hmm.
And,
Yeah, for sure. So she sleeps on the side of the road for the night because she's very like sleepy, and she's almost gets into an accident. She claims. So she drives off. She realizes that she needs to get a new set of wheels, basically, so that this cop won't follow her. However, this does not pan out because the cop is following her anyways. And so it's just a very suspicious, very tension-filled scene. And the best part is this scene is filled with a lot of silence. And that silence builds a lot of tension just from that. But so anyways, very suspicious scene. We get her transition into back on the road. She's driving. Very heavy rainfall. Very like sprout, I don't know, just mega rain. So she pulls outside the road. This is where we get the Bates Motel, the classic shot of the no vacancy sign, and it says vacancy, of course. This is where you get the introduction of Norman's character, Norman Bates, who's technically, if you really want to call him, he's kind of the main character of the entire film. But you get that introduced. She rents a hotel for the night. He wants to have dinner with her, and because he just has no one else but him and his mom. Who that's a whole separate story we're going to get into here right now. The mother is introduced at this part of the plot. She's a very, very, very strange character, especially throughout the parts that you see her in. But this scene does a lot to introduce Norman's awkwardness, especially when he comes back with the food that he's prepared, and his mother and him have kind of had an argument about this girl, Marion, of course. And it's very much, this is where you get they have a long talk, right? This sets up their character development for each other. They're kind of like, oh, like we're okay with each other. Like you seem a little strange, but you're a nice guy, and you're a nice girl.
Even though he seems to be prying a little bit too much into her.
Yes,
private
exactly,
life.
right. And you get this idea of private traps, right? The whole idea of everyone's got their own thing that they're going through. And this is where you get the classic line of "We all go a little mad sometimes." After that, you get the Norman peephole scene, and of course, that is the scene that kind of sets up the rest of this
interaction between the two of them.
Yeah, it really just defines the rest of this. It goes from being oh, nice guy to this guy's a creeper, and now we can confirm that. So he goes up, you get into the house, you get the first interior shots of the house, kind of just works to develop that scene more than anything. And then, of course, the classic shower scene that defined this movie for the rest of its life was the first of its kind because Hollywood did not want to see that, apparently. And it's really funny because now that's all Hollywood is for a good chunk of their films.
It's more graphic and gross and
right.
They're just for graphic sake.
Mm-hmm. Right. Yeah. No, this scene was very much they needed this to develop the story.
And there's a reason.
Mm-hmm.
And it's tasteful too. It's not you don't see anything really in her body. You don't draw attention to it. It's more about what is happening to her, and she just happens to be taking a shower at the time.
Right, exactly. Because I mean, in theory, this scene could have happened to her at any point in this room, but the shower scene is just very powerful, very impactful. First time a toilet was flushed on a movie screen, and people saw it. That was a big, big deal. So, anyways, after this, of course, she is murdered. You get the cleanup scene where son comes in and realizes what's happened. Norman, of course. So he works to clean up mother's mess. And he, wraps her body up and folds her all up in a nice little thing and takes her outside, puts her in her car, go transition right into the swamp scene. And, of course, he dumps the car into the swamp and it sinks in. And he's very patient to make sure that it does go in and that it all sinks and that everything's just as tidy as it was before.
Because he loves his mother.
Of course.
And a mother's best friend is her son.
It's a quote from later in the movie, but yeah, that's true. So you get the swamp scene. We're going right into Lila now. Lila is Marion's sister who was out of town in Tucson for the weekend. She came back and her sister is missing. I totally forgot to mention, but during the driving scenes, the driving scenes are so cool because it works to set up what's going on away from the camera, and it doesn't even have to pull back to those scenes. It's just solely focused on her, and there's just audio voiceovers of how people find out that she's missing, people finding out that this money's missing too, and so it really works to develop a lot of the story through those driving scenes, and it's just really, really cool.
And it might be just in her head what she's thinking they're saying.
It could be. I mean, it does also come to fruition later. So, yes. But if you watch it the first time, you could very well think that she's just thinking it, I guess.
And it could go either way. It might just be a artist's interpretation, and you can interpret it any way.
Yeah, for the most part, maybe. I mean, I don't know. Anyways, this is where the PI also comes into play because Lila goes to visit Sam, the boyfriend, to ask if she knows he knows where Marion's at. The PI is introduced. He's doing some snooping around, of course. Excuse me. Wow. You get the hotel montage at this point. PI says, don't leave. I'm going to go do my work and come back. And so you get this, and you go right up to the Bates motel, of course. This transitions into the PI talking to Bates, and, that whole interaction is just so well handled by the PI, and Norman is just, completely cracking under this pressure. And turns into him lying, of course, and the PI kind of finding that out. He eventually figures out that Marion was at the hotel, and he is asked to leave, so he does leave the hotel, or motel, sorry, it's not a hotel. So PI goes back to the motel, only to go into the house of Norman Bates and his mother. And this is where you get the classic stairway scene, which this scene is probably the second shot in this film that actually truly defines the film. And it's hilarious to watch now because it's just what on earth is happening in this scene? If you don't know, he goes up the stairs to the house. You enter in, there's a stairway. So he walks up the stairs and the mother jumps out and stabs him. But him falling down the stairs gives the impression that he never trips. His feet just glide down the stairs the whole time.
Like he's on rollers.
Right, exactly. And it's hilarious. And it's a classic scene that I think everyone needs to see because it was revolutionary for the time. But now it's just hilarious. So the PI had actually told the Sam and Lila that he was going to be back at the house. At the shop within about an hour. And when he doesn't return, Sam heads off to the motel and kind of comes back with nothing, just kind of goes there, sees Norman, sees the mother upstairs, and thinks that, okay, well, I don't know where the PI is at, but he's not here. So returns to nothing. They decide to end up going to the sheriff, and the sheriff reveals the mother's fate, the fact that there actually is no mother left anymore. The mother passed away 10 years ago. So he doesn't really know what what Sam and the PI saw, but he does not think it's the mother. So this transitions into the scene where they kind of set the mother up to maybe actually be alive, and Bates, picks his mother up and he goes up the stairs, and it's a very cool cinematography shot of him in the room, and he walks out carrying her, and you're like, oh, well, this has to be, she has to be real, because that's clearly him or her, him carrying her. So then we go back down. The sheriff, of course, Sam and Lila confront him the next morning after all this occurs, because he went out and visited them and said that he didn't see anything that was wrong or anything like that. So of course it's no one is there. I mean, he doesn't know what they're talking about. So then Sam and Lila decide to, of course, take things in their own hands. They're going to go confront Bates, and they're going to snoop around basically. And so you get the Sam and Bates scene where they've rented this room, and now Sam needs to go distract Norman because Lila needs to snoop around. So Lila, of course, goes into the house and snoops around all the rooms and finds these just very weird, just off-putting things more than anything that you can't really describe, and you can't really in the moment be like, why is that happening? Until later on, of course, where Bates knocks out Sam after realizing that Lila is in the house now, unaccounted for, and he doesn't want anyone to find out a secret. So then Lila finds Mrs. Bates in the basement, and it turns out that it's just her corpse. It's never actually been the mother. And this is where Sam and Lila fend off Bates. Bates comes down in his cross-dressing, whatever outfit he has to play the mother part of his brain. And he tries to, of course, kill Lila because she found out a secret, and Sam defends them, and they call the cops. And you get the ending of the movie, the courthouse scene, which Jared was not a fan of.
I just feel like the way they explained it made the audience seem stupid. Like they were just telling you everything. But that was also probably a sign of the times.
They just wanted.
It's
to
a
make
very
it a
shocking
story.
movie. The audiences probably just had no idea what to think.
Right. Absolutely. So. And of course, for people that don't know, the courthouse, basically the Sam and Lila, the sheriff, and a bunch of people from the town are kind of in this courthouse because, of course, Norman was arrested by the police, taken into custody, and now he's acting fully like the mother. So this psychologist kind of comes in and describes the whole situation of how he's been playing both parts of mother and son because he needed that part because he actually ended up killing her 10 years ago when she was supposedly, murder-suicide with her lover at the time. And so he...
Because his father died.
Yes, yeah. There's a whole lot of issues with Norman. Norman is just a crazy character that I want to really get into here. But, so, summed up version, basically, now Norman is no longer Norman, but he is his mother. And he kind of has this, alternate personality thing going on where he's fully just acclimated to the second personality and no longer has anything to do with the first personality because it's just so traumatic. But that's the plot. That's the whole film summed up in, I don't know how long that took, but I'm out of breath. So, anyways, deep dives. What do we want to talk about? Because there's a lot to talk about with this film.
All right. So, first, I want to start off with how this film changed cinema. And the references that this film has to Friday the 13th, Scream.
Well, the references that those have to this.
Yes. Yeah. Friday the 13th, Scream, and Halloween. So first, the boyfriend's name is Sam Loomis. The same name of Dr. Samuel Loomis from Halloween, Michael's doctor. And they took that name and gave it to the killer in the first Scream, Billy Loomis. So you can see how all three of these films are connected in a roundabout way.
Right.
And then, in a meta sense, in Halloween H2O, Janet Leigh has a cameo as a secretary in a school that's in the movie. And one of her only lines is, "Hey, can you tell the janitor to check the bathrooms? That's clogged in there."
Okay.
So it's really meta.
Mm-hmm.
And it's also even more because Janet Leigh is Jamie Lee Curtis's mom.
Oh, really?
So...
Like in real life?
In
or
real
in the
life.
movie? Oh, okay.
Yeah, that's where you get the... That's where how they even cast her in Halloween to begin with.
Oh, okay.
Because her mother was the original Scream Queen. Her daughter, it's a perfect fit.
Right, okay. That's interesting. I did not know that.
And the reveal that he's been keeping his mother's corpse the whole time is just ripped like right out of this movie and put into Friday the 13th Part 2, where the final girl of the movie is running through the forest, running away from Jason, and she runs to this cabin where he's been living for all these years. It's not really explained in the movie because the sequels are very loosely tied together.
Okay.
There's like hardly any connecting tissue. But she goes in there and she sees Mrs. Voorhees' corpse, dressed in the sweater that she wore in the first movie because, spoiler, turn away now, Mrs. Voorhees is the killer in the first Friday the 13th. So Jason found her body and has kept it for all these years. And puts a sweater on her and, sets her up almost exactly the same as in this movie.
Okay, right.
So this one film and these very small details that could have just been forgotten have shaped how horror movies have moved on even into the classics from the 80s.
Right. Things that
and the early 2000s.
Right. Movies that people would say have actually defined that genre were defined by
this
Hitchcock.
Yes.
And all of his films. Yeah, for sure. Yeah, I mean, that's one of the... I can do one now if you have multiple. Anyways, the music in this film is so impactful. It has so much to do with everything about every scene that there is music into. Like, just anything, any scene that you hear in the movie that is backed up with music is so very intentional. It's so very much meant to either cause some tension, to either cause some thrill, or to just kind of give that low melody of just something going on in the background. Like, it's so, like, this whole movie, all of my deep dives is just how everything in this movie is intentional, and Hitchcock is a very intentional director. There's nothing usually on screen that doesn't mean something, whether that's a very deep dive into his brain, or it's something that is actually very, very pertaining to the film at that exact moment. But the music is very impactful. Of course, the classic music is from the shower scene, that dun 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 dun, and it's just very high pitched and squealy and just squeaky, and it's just a classic from just that one scene. But the film has so many more just amazing soundtrack moments that you get kind of glossed over because of the shower scene. Even the music from the hallway, the stairway scene, where he attacks her she attacks him and he falls down the stairs. That music is very impactful in that sense too. But that was just one of the first. I have a list, so if you want to go to something else, please.
Oh, I have not really have anything else tied to this, so you can.
Yeah, no, that's sure for sure. I mean, Kenny, do you have anything that you really wanted to say, or are we kind of hitting the nail on the head?
Yeah, I really don't have a whole lot. Only just I kind of figured it out.
Right.
After the first kill.
Now, how did that impact the rest of your watching? Like, did that happen? You're like, okay, I'm kind of out of this movie now because I know, or am I like intrigued because I want to know if I'm right?
It was kind of like I want to make sure I'm right, but it wasn't like, oh, I need to make sure I'm right because I was already 98% sure I was right.
Right.
It was fairly obvious about halfway through.
Yeah.
I will say it took forever to get into something interesting.
Yeah, the beginning of the film, if you're not acquainted with the film, or if you're not very, I don't know. Even to me, the first time I watched it, I don't remember much about the beginning. Going back and watching it a second time, I was a little bit more involved because I knew more of the plot line, and I knew like, okay, there's probably things here that I missed, but I can completely see why you would like think that. Not saying that you're wrong, because it is a very lengthy thing to get to before even the first murder occurs, right? And you're like, okay, this is a kind of a slasher thing, but that's Hitchcock.
Like,
I mean, that's just who he is,
right? Like I figured they would get to the Bates Motel not fairly quickly, but quicker than what they did.
But did you know about the Bates Motel?
Oh, I knew about
right.
the Bates
okay.
Motel.
Yeah. See, everyone knows about the Bates Motel. They know about the shower scene. There's just classics.
And I gotta admit to the audience, I fell asleep a few times during the beginning part. I mean,
he did, but after that, after the first,
it is pretty easy to tune out.
Yeah, because there's just a lot of like random stuff going on. But I will say a lot of the dialogue is very intentional. That's the other thing I was going to bring up. The dialogue is the amount of times that Norman and Marion talk about death is astounding if you go back and listen to it. Mm-hmm. Like, oh, it'd be a shame for that to die like that. There's just so many little crisps of just dialogue that when you go back and you listen to it, even a second time or whatever that is, you're just like, oh wow, that was really good dialogue. Like thinking back to like what's coming up now, like that's so like crazy how it builds up.
I do have one other thing I wanted to say
go
before. I feel like he didn't have any plans to kill her at all, Marion.
Right.
But when she brought up that maybe his mother should be in a home or an institution, that's where he said, "Oh, you're dying.
Yeah, no,
you disrespected my mother, and that means you disrespected me."
Mm-hmm. And well, literally, right?
Yeah. And if he thinks he's his mother at this point, and so he's like, "Yep, you're dead."
Mm. Now it is explained later on that the reason he kills people is because he feels attraction to them, and that then of course kind of transitions him over to the mother side where she wants all of his attention and that whole situation. But it's definitely because you could tell that he wasn't aggressive until she brought that up. Like the whole mood of that entire scene in the parlor changes when it switches from, tell me about your mom to you should leave. Like you need to get out of here. Like don't be a part of that situation. And he's like, no, like my mom needs me. Like she can't do that on her own, and it's just very like that other part of his brain is speaking more now than the other side, right? But cool, interesting fact. Oh, go ahead.
I got one last thing.
Yeah.
The stairway scene for me was
hilarious
because it was awful.
It is. If you go back and look at it, you're like, why?
So terrible, especially because I mean, it was the first time for me seeing it, so it's like, and I get the age of the movie too, and it's like you really couldn't do a whole lot with it, but at least make it look like he fell down the stairs instead of like it's starting to float in midair and is just gliding.
He was perfectly positioned on the stairs,
and then the way he falls when he gets off the stairs, as I say that in quotes, is also terrible.
Yeah,
it's
honestly, the movie holds up now because of the iconic scenes and the iconic like items, like the Bates Motel. Like the opening shot of Phoenix is a very iconic shot of Phoenix. Because graphically and like what you said, like the way like they did the stairway scene, that's terrible. Like looking at it now, you're like, what on earth is that? But looking at it then, that was like a real life thing. Like they're like, oh my gosh, he's falling down the stairs, right? Like, and that's just, it's like looking at it now, you're just like laughing at it the whole time because you're like, that's so bad. But yeah, the film one that was used throughout this film was actually used in order to replicate human vision. Because if you notice, you from a lot of the perspectives of the shot cinematography wise, it very much makes it look like you're a person observing what's going on rather than just like a camera. And maybe that's something I picked up on a second watch through, but it's the film lens I think they used, I want to say 35 millimeter and like 15 millimeter or something, like not very common film for that time even, because they wanted to replicate human vision. Like you were watching it and kind of in the film more than you were actually in a theater watching it or whatever the case is. But other little fun fact that I picked up on the second time I watched it was his love for birds is discussed, and then she immediately reveals that her last name is Crane. And that's just a kind of like an interesting, like, oh, that's interesting. Like that kind of dichotomy, right? Like this idea of he loves birds and then her name's Crane, but she's going to die in the next couple minutes, and it's just that idea, I guess. But
and it's kind of foreshadowing when he says, oh, I love taxidermy. And he's kept his mom's body so preserved for so long.
Right. He likes to stuff things. And it's like,
just like he stuffed her into the back of that car.
Exactly. Yeah. I really have two other things, but I kind of touched on the one. So the last thing, the driving scenes with Marion are so creepy. like intentionally creepy, but they're just so off-putting because you're watching her drive and there's these voices going on and her eyes are just staring at one spot the whole time. It's just, the movie does such a good job of, it's not scary, it's just like you have this weird, exactly, you're very put off by the whole thing. Kind of, yeah, that's a good word, perturbed by the whole thing, and you're just kind of like, what is, like, why, what?
Well, and there's parts when she's in the car, she smiles just like Norman smiles. So you kind of wonder, are they kind of cut from the same cloth? Because she, even in the beginning, she's in love with this guy, Sam. But she's like, well, maybe I should just leave you. Maybe you should find somebody else. Why should I stay? Like, she's like, but then she's like, oh, we should get married.
Right. Yeah. She's very much in this, like, it's almost
limbo.
one of those. Right. Exactly. Like, it's a very much a, like, she just feels like she's in this spot where she's just very unhappy with her life. Exactly. Yeah. Trapped. Kind of like if we could relate it to a movie we just watched, The Fabelmans.
Yeah.
I mean, that's kind of how the mom felt, right? She felt trapped in this relationship because she had wanted to do this one thing and now she has to do this other thing. And it's just one of those, I don't know. It's just kind of crazy how, and I don't think Fabelmans was very much inspired or affected by Psycho, but
it's just a parallel that we can draw as audience members.
Exactly, right. So, anyways, that's my rant. Again, this is probably in my top 5 movies of all time. I just think it's an iconic movie and I love it. And maybe the technology doesn't hold up, but man, the cinematography work is just something that you don't see anywhere else. And that's anything you get with Hitchcock. So, anyways, I will let you two rate.
Are we ready to do our...
I think we're ready to rate, yeah.
Our ratings, 1 out of 10. Kenny, I've been very interested to see what your opinion is on this.
It's probably gonna shock one person in the room.
Is he gonna give the first 1 out of 10 review?
No. I'm not, no.
It's not that bad of a movie. If you didn't enjoy it, I'm not upset or anything. But.
I gotta give it a 5 out of 10.
Yeah, I can understand that
because the opening was so long. And I'm not trying to knock the stairway scene, but I am.
He's just not a fan of the
so
stairway
poorly shot.
But see, what's crazy is that stairway scene is like so pivotal for that film genre, and
at the time we're also spoiled by modern techniques.
Oh, absolutely.
Well, right, and I'm not trying to take away from it because I get
it just
how
didn't hit you the way
the scene is, but yeah, it didn't hit me as very iconic at all. It hit me as like, this is terrible.
Wait till we get some pitchforks in the comments.
And like some of the acting wasn't great, and for some people it could have been better. Like the iconic shot of Phoenix. Honestly, I thought it was a different town because that did not look like Phoenix at all. Especially coming from me, because I've been out to the valley a lot.
Another Fabelman's reference. He knows where the house is.
Right.
So it did not look like Phoenix at all. So
well, in that opening scene, so they actually, fun fact, I guess. So your rating's 5 out of 10. Did you want to go any further? Because I'm going to give a fun fact about the opening scene if you don't have anything else.
That's fine. Yeah, but I give it a 5 out of 10.
Okay. So you wouldn't watch it again?
No.
Okay.
I would watch The Fabelmans.
Okay.
Again before I watch Psycho.
Okay, fair enough. The opening sequence they actually filmed on a helicopter originally. They had a whole separate intro for all of that, and then they went back and they were like, "Nope, it's too shaky. We can't use it." So instead of reshooting it with the helicopter, they actually used some stock footage of Phoenix, Arizona that apparently I think Universal had at the time. And so they ended up using that instead. The problem was that stuff was shot during like a Christmassy time of some sort, or holidays, winter time, somewhere in there. And there were Christmas decorations in some of the windows of the buildings that are in the opening scene. And the Alfred Hitchcock's solution to this problem was to put the text over the windows where the Christmas decorations were at. And so where it's funny because maybe someone's taken the text off and so you can see what's behind it, but it would be funny to see that. But yeah, if you watch this movie, which I highly recommend you do, when you see the text in the very opening sequence, behind those letters are Christmas decorations that are intricately hidden. So, anyways, that's my tidbit. But Jared,
I'm probably gonna hit somewhere in the middle because I'd probably give it like a 7.
that's fair.
I mean, it's iconic, and I get it. As someone who loves film and aspires to make film someday, Hitchcock really invented a lot for this. As we've stated before, like all of the new things he did that are commonplace now, and you would never expect it to not be in a movie. This was the first time, and he was the one that had enough guts to do it.
Mm-hmm.
And props to Universal for taking that chance. So I would give it that, but also at the same time, I still have some of the same issues that Kenny has. The opening is very slow. The ending is too explained. You could understand it all just by seeing the wig come off of him.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And that's it.
Right.
That's all you have to say. You can explain that, yeah, he killed his mom, and then he felt bad, and he had a mental breakdown where he decided to be her and himself. And that's it. You don't have to explain that he wasn't a transvestite or like they say that he was just, you know, that just by who he is and then seeing the unmasking. So I know for the times a lot of audiences had to be told a lot, especially because it was fairly new concepts
Right.
across the board. But I would watch it again if at some point they release an all-color version just for the experience. And I would go see it in the theater if given the opportunity.
I think in theater
just for the
it would
historical
be,
like balance.
Yeah. No, I think it probably I have to imagine that it holds a different standing in an actual theater compared to like any other place that you could see it at, like where we're at right now or anything. Like you just can't replicate that experience. So.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's my thoughts.
Yeah, 7 out of 10, 5 out of 10. Sorry, I got to give her a 9 out of 10. You don't
have to be sorry about that.
Yeah, no, it's a classic to me. I think that it does struggle in some of its. Honestly, no. I'm 9.5. 9. It's almost a perfect movie for me.
You don't have to say sorry.
It's almost a complete perfect movie. It was shot on a budget of like $807,000, and that today is like you can't make many movies with that are made today.
Nope. You can't even make a movie on $300.
Right, exactly. Like you just can't, and just what he was able to create, and just man, it's one of those movies that I just cannot recommend to people. And even if you watch it like Kenny did, and you just can't stand it. You're like, it's a movie. You watched it. I think it will grow on you throughout time.
And it'll stick with you.
Fully convinced. And then if you see scenes that call back to this movie, you're like, oh, look, that's a call back to that movie I watched, And it's just one of those things that can stick around a lot longer than I think a lot of people would give it credit for. And
yeah, you won't forget this movie. You won't. Especially if you didn't like it, you will not forget it because you didn't like it. And you could, so there's movies that I've seen in the last year that I couldn't tell you. I don't remember. But this one, it'll stick with me forever. Even if it's not my favorite thing.
Yeah. Yeah, it's a film that I just cannot recommend enough. So yeah, 9.5 out of 10. It's up there for me. It really is. And I love it. It's a great film. So I think that's all we have to say.
It's the second highest rating we've had.
That is, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
No.
The highest rating we've had is a 9.6, and that was mine.
That's true.
Yeah.
That's true. Yeah, you had 9.6. Yeah, 9.5 for me, for sure.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, so we hope you guys enjoyed. If you did, make sure to check out all the other episodes we got. We got a lot right now.
This is episode 9, so you have a lot of a backlog to pick up on.
Yeah, you do. So
especially with that Glory Road episode.
Ooh, some good thoughts in that bad boy. I'm telling you what. Anyways, so we hope you guys are enjoying these. And if you are, let us know. Like I said, you can always email us or message us on Facebook, Instagram, ccflugnutspodcast.com.
Just comment
for the
on
website.
the page when they.
There you go. There you go. So yeah, from all of us here at the Jonah Show Studios. I guess
Stay caffeinated.
Stay caffeinated, and I wouldn't hurt a fly.
Me neither.
I would.
I figured you would, Kenny.
Oh, I know you would.
Thanks
See
for
you guys
listening,
next
guys.
time. Hey everyone, we hope you enjoyed the episode today. If you did, you should go check out the rest of our episodes on our website at ccflugnutspodcast.com.
You can also listen to us wherever you find your podcasts.
Follow us on our Facebook and Instagram pages by searching the Lugnuts Podcast Group.
Thanks for listening, and remember, Jesus loves you,
And
so do we.